Residents of many cities are witnessing significant changes in police response protocols. In some areas, the police no longer respond to calls that are not classified as in-progress emergencies. Crimes like criminal mischief, theft, harassment, and even most burglary alarms are now being handled by enhanced telephone reporting units. This means that residents must file police reports over the phone, and officers will not be dispatched unless the situation is deemed an emergency. It has now reached the point where, during the hours of 3 a.m. to 7 a.m., there are no officers stationed throughout certain cities. Instead, call boxes linked directly to 911 have been installed for use in emergencies, while as few as 20 officers are responsible for covering an entire city during these overnight shifts. The implications of these changes are profound. The dramatic decrease in policing across the country has several underlying causes and potential consequences. This situation bears an unsettling resemblance to the fictional scenario depicted in the film The Purge, where law and order are suspended for a designated period. High-level police officials often argue that this new approach is supported by data, but it's really challenging to see how it can have any positive outcomes. When law enforcement withdraws, something else inevitably fills the void. Reducing police presence has led to the formation of local militias and heavily armed neighborhood watches, composed of people who may lack proper training. The situation is ripe for accidents, sectarian violence, and a general escalation of conflicts. Instances of civilians attempting to enforce the law have led to nationwide protests. If police presence continues to diminish, more instances of vigilante justice gone wrong with tragic outcomes could occur. And the decline in police presence isn't confined to one region. Police in cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco are not responding to certain types of 911 calls due to staffing shortages. This trend extends across political boundaries, affecting both blue and red states. The decrease in police availability is largely a consequence of the defund the police movement, which has made law enforcement careers less appealing and more hazardous. In response to these challenges, some cities are deploying civilian teams to handle mental health crises instead of the police. However, this approach has had mixed results, sometimes leading to assaults and fatalities among the responders. As police forces struggle with staffing issues, the time it takes for them to respond to emergencies has increased dramatically, further straining public safety. And the international perspective adds another layer of concern. In places without effective law enforcement, marauders and gangs often take control, leading to a breakdown of social order. This brutal reality is far removed from the relatively safe and structured society most Americans are accustomed to. The degradation of policing is paralleled by worrying trends in other countries. For instance, Canada has recently proposed laws that would imprison individuals for up to 25 years for potential quote-unquote hate speech, a move that critics argue infringes on free speech rights. Even in Europe, similar laws have been enacted, criminalizing speech that criticizes government policies on immigration and other sensitive issues. These measures are deeply controversial, and they've led to the imprisonment of individuals for merely expressing dissenting views. The Church Committee hearings in the 1970s investigated intelligence abuses by the CIA, NSA, FBI, and other agencies, leading to reforms and restrictions on domestic surveillance and propaganda activities. Executive Order 12333 issued by Ronald Reagan in 1981, set guidelines for intelligence activities, including prohibiting domestic spying and propaganda. This order was designed to protect U.S. citizens from government overreach and to ensure transparency. And then we had the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012, which was part of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2013. This act amended the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948, which had previously restricted the dissemination of government-produced informational materials, or propaganda, to only foreign audiences. The 2012 amendments, enacted by President Obama, allowed for these materials to be available within the United States, lifting the restriction on domestic propaganda by the government. This change has led to a significant increase in government propaganda aimed at U.S. citizens. The Supreme Court has ruled that police do not have a legal obligation to protect individuals, which has significant implications for personal safety, especially as police departments across the country are experiencing massive staffing shortages and reduced response times. In some cities, police are not responding at all to certain types of crimes, leading to increased vulnerability for residents. Another example, in cities like Baltimore and Detroit, there are reports of bodies being found days later with little effort made to investigate the crimes. This lack of response is contributing to a perception of lawlessness, similar to the situation in Haiti, where gangs have taken control after police stations were destroyed. As a result, individuals must take their safety into their own hands. So here are some key steps to prepare. Organize with your neighbors. Form community groups for mutual support and defense. This ensures you have a network to rely on in emergencies. Get training. Training in self-defense, firearms, and medical skills is crucial. Consider training with reputable organizations and instructors. Equip yourself. Ensure you have the necessary equipment, including firearms, ammunition, medical supplies, and other essentials. If you don't own a weapon, you might want to consider acquiring one and get proper training. Be aware of legal implications. Understand the legalities of self-defense in your area. In some places, using a weapon in self-defense can lead to legal consequences. Consider relocation. If possible, move to a smaller town or rural area that can provide a safer environment with a more robust community support system. Stay informed and adaptive. Keep abreast of local crime trends and adjust your preparedness plans accordingly. Flexibility and adaptability are key to surviving in uncertain times. The drastic reduction in police presence and response times due to funding cuts and other systemic issues paints a grim picture for public safety. If this trend continues, we risk facing a reality that eerily mirrors the dystopian chaos depicted in The Purge. Without adequate law enforcement, communities may see a rise in crime, vigilante justice, and a breakdown of social order. It is imperative for policymakers and communities to address these challenges urgently to prevent further deterioration and ensure that our cities remain safe and orderly.